Welcome to the Painter's Dialectic. I'm your host, Josh Green, a painter and art educator living in New York City. And today we're going to talk about the war in the Ukraine. I will be joined by Ukrainian art conservator Anastasiya Mogucheva. In this episode, Anastasiya describes her personal experience with the war and how it has changed her values. We also discuss her plans to return to the Ukraine after the war to restore all the damaged artworks. Don't just listen to the podcast. If you'd like to help the Ukrainian war effort and the people affected by the war, Anastasiya recommended two organizations that we have linked in the comments. The first is the Masha Fund, which aids mothers and children affected by the war. You can access that at mashafund.org.ua. The second is Come Back Alive. You can find that at savelife.in.ua. There you can support the Ukrainian soldiers in the Ukrainian war effort. If you'd like to support the show, go to our Patreon, The Painter's Dialectic, and subscribe. We have different tiers with behind-the-scenes content of how we develop these ideas. This would help us continue making this meaningful content. You can also check out our Instagram page at The Painter's Dialectic. You can check out my Instagram page at Josh Green Art. You can check out Anastasia's Instagram page at a.mogucheva. And if you'd like to study with me, you can sign up for lessons at the Greenatelier.art. Nastia, it's so good to see you. How are you doing?
Oh, hello. Long time no see. Okay, no, not that long time. We still keep connection. Yes, so happy to see you, Josh.
So we have a very intense episode today, right? But before we do that, I thought it'd be nice to introduce you, hear a little bit about your background and what you're doing now. So yeah, if you have anything to say to introduce yourself, go ahead.
Okay, hello everyone. So my name is Anastasia, and I'm a friend of Josh, but otherwise I'm like an art conservator, and I got born in Ukraine, and I lived there in my childhood. But then I got moved to Norway. Now I'm living in Sweden and trying to speak Swedish, and I work for Swedish Museum Nordiska Museet now, and making ready some objects for a future exhibition.
Right. So you've lived all around. You speak how many languages currently?
Mainly, okay. Uh, mm, I think five. Let's say five.
Okay, so Russian, Ukrainian,
No,
English.
Russian we cut out. Like
You
that
got rid
language
of
died.
Russian now? Okay, so just
Otherwise, it would have been six languages. Now it's five.
okay. So you're forgetting one language right now.
Yeah, it's
Okay, so
done. It's
just
burnt.
okay. So Ukrainian, English,
And
Norwegian,
then Swedish,
Swedish.
and then we have like Italian, which is like on the end of my list. Trying to leave. I'm constantly like taking. I have a teacher in Italian, like my private one, and
Mhm.
sometimes like when I feel I have a lot of spare time and I want to have like an extra CrossFit for my mind. I'm like,
Mhm.
hello, let's remember the past. So yeah, but recently I haven't had it.
And so your art training, we know each other because we studied together at the Florence Academy, and then you went to study at an academy in the Ukraine. You did the traditional drawing there, and you also started learning art conservation. And then you did your master's in Sweden at which school?
Gothenburg
At
University.
Gothenburg University. And you've helped restore all kinds of things, even UNESCO sites, right? You restored a ceiling chapel in Sweden, right?
Yes, that's
Right. And so now you're working on furniture at the museum in Sweden, and you actually live inside the museum in Sweden, right?
Sort of, yes, correct. Exactly, because our museum is it's collecting like cultural heritage of Nordic countries. So it's
Mm-hmm.
very unique museum,
Mm-hmm.
and it's collecting art objects from Finland, Norway, Denmark, Sweden,
Mm-hmm.
and now they want to. We're gonna be like this year 150 years old since
Yeah.
we established. So it's going to be an anniversary year, and for that we are preparing an exhibition, which is like the people in Norse, and we will present 500 years of Nordic life and culture. So it's not that much like painting as painting museum. It's more like a folk art, decorative art, like everything. Everything
Nice.
what people were surrounding themselves in their life. So
So you're busy restoring 500 years worth of
yes, right
furniture.
now we're in the I'm taking the 15th century objects, and they are really like I can tell they lived 500 years. They are getting tricky and hard to work on.
So let's get into it. So, your home country is at war. Um, Not only are your people fleeing or fighting, but also the artworks of your country. Some of them are here in New York City at the Met. I went and saw them the other day. A lot of my favorite artists are Ukrainian, and Russia claims them as Russians, right?
Yes, that's correct. It has always been like that.
So before we jump into all the history and what you want to do after the war, why don't we talk about a perspective that people don't usually get, and that's the personal perspective. So, if you could maybe just tell us some really significant personal experiences or moments during the war, how the war has affected you, and then how you've changed and how your values have changed.
Yes, we can start with that, even though this
That's a
topic
lot.
is a bit, yeah, it was a hard, like, beginning, but I can start. Like, sometimes I'm kind of blocking myself from like, from my hardest and most painful periods of my life when the war started, just to keep, like, life balance. But of course, it's also like a state which I don't want to forget. So I
Yeah.
constantly like bringing it back time to time. And yeah, you cry a lot during those times. You have a lot of pain, you have a lot of tension, but those things are very important to recall and make your body like emotionally memorize it, because I think that that pain, it's sort of like a protection thing which can will work for me and for our future generation as the memory to know who our enemy is and never forget it. So that's why I'm kind of it will be easy for me to go back to those times when I felt the most pain. So the most, like, the craziest, like, everyone is starting with is like, how did you met the 24th of February? And that day I will never forget in my entire life, and all the days which were going from that. um I've been in touch with my friends, and some of my friends were already in Ukraine, maybe like a month before the war, 2 months before the war, were saying to me, it's gonna be the war, like, we're pretty sure. While I was like, no, because like you're always like naive when those things are coming. You don't want to take for real that this thing can even possibly real. Like, how can people be bombed and dying in their own and killed in their own houses, like, in this century, and nobody will like be able to stop it? Like, it just sounds like, no, of course, the war, like in our times, absolutely not, especially in this extent. And my mother was at that time in Ukraine, right, like some days before the war. And because we got my grandmother, she was very sick and she had her elderly like weaknesses, so she had to be taken care of. So my mother plane ticket was on 24th of February. Like she bought it that she will leave Ukraine 24th of February. But already like on 14th of February, she got like a big alarm on her phone, like a message. You have to evacuate Ukraine. The war is gonna start. It came from the Norwegian government, and when she came home, she didn't was like, "Come on, there is no war." Like, I already like on the 14th of February, the vibe in general in Ukraine was very chill. Like people were leaving, sun was shining, people were doing their things, planning plans. I don't know, like. Working and stuff like that, and suddenly she's like looking at the tickets, and the last flight was like 16th of 15th, no, it was actually, let me remember it correctly, 14th of February was the last flight from Ukraine. So she got the message the 12th of February, to be more precise. I don't know, somehow I remember the 16th, but never mind. And yes, so I was like, you need to buy that plane ticket. Like, you have to go. And she's like, but I cannot move from Ukraine in one day. There's so many things I still have to do. I'm not ready for that and stuff. Like, and it's not like, I don't think the war will start. It's just like, it's fine. And I'm like, no, like, there has been already some things happening. And I remember I was given as an example the Belarus country. I was like, we also thought that the things which happen there are so surreal that in all normal worlds it cannot be real, but it happened there. Why we should ignore this fact? And then she was like, maybe you're right. And so she bought the ticket, and I remember the 14th of February was super scary when she was flying. She had like one of the last planes. She didn't got time to say goodbye to my grandmother. So yeah, I was seeing like on the radar 24 how all the planes were leaving Ukraine, and the sky around it was getting emptier, emptier, and emptier. And that was scary. I was like, this is it. Um on 21st of February, I woke up to go to my internship, and I got thousands of messages from my friends with photos that they woke up at 5 a.m. in the morning, and it was like, because there was bombs, there was shellings, there were air raid sounds, they were running to shelters, and it happened like in 1 second. I wake up and my country is on fire. I receive all those messages, and I literally, like, my heart stops. I got very paralyzed. I barely managed to take myself out from the house. Constantly on the news, like, you're burning from inside. You don't understand what's going on. I lost my appetite, I lost my sleep, I couldn't concentrate. Like, I could go to the supermarket to grab some dinner, and after walking there for 1 hour, I will end up buying two clementines. Like, the body was in such stress. It was intense. The pain like, I was very scared of my messages and calls from my friends. They were constantly like abrupt by something, by they screaming like, there is a rocket flying, we hear explosions, we have to run to the shelter. And that all, like, for you not being there to help them, and seeing that it might be that the life will end up like today or tomorrow because things are going well, was crazy enough. And then some of my friends managed to escape to other cities of Ukraine, other which were a bit more safe at that time. Half of them stayed in Ukraine. Also, my father stayed in Kiev, and it was stressful, especially with my grandmother, because she couldn't take care of herself. She was not understanding what's going on, and we moved her outside of Kiev, and outside of Kiev was the one which was under the extreme war, extreme shelling. Near her, they were exploding like an oil depot. It was a lot of fire, a lot of toxic smoke, and there was so much like shelling around her area that I could lose connection. Like the phone connection with her, like for 7 days, 6 days, I would call and there is like no sound. Though it was the most scary days. Also, the fact that you couldn't sleep at night was that the Russia, as in its most mean form, was bombing the most at nights. So when everyone was sleeping and was tired and exhausted, that was their peak hours. So then I couldn't sleep because I had to follow where they're exploding. Is my grandmother and my relatives safe? Which area then? And there was a lot of like tanks entering Kiev, all those videos. Then I started, the some rockets started to fall right by my house on my street, on the street which I'm walking like back and forth when I'm there like 100 times a day. That was like, I was shocked to see my street, my area, my underground station, my McDonald's, like all the cafes I know, they're gone. Like nothing is left. From that moment was crazy. Also to read the news and they were like saying, "Oh, there is a shelling in this area. We heard like a house is burning. It got exploded." And then you're like, "Oh, which one?" And you immediately think maybe it's my house. And you're scrolling the news, you're starting to see that they're uploading the photos of the burned house, and you're like trying to recognize, is it your home or not your home? Those moments were also pretty intense in my mind. So on my street in the end I got 3 rockets. My house luckily is still alive, but it's very close to it, like mega close. So it's scary. And on the 23rd of February this year, I met a girl whose house got under the rockets, which was on my street. And she's telling that her neighbor died. She luckily evacuated herself to another city of Ukraine. So when they bombed her house, she wasn't there. So she survived, but those apartments are gone to the first floor, like to the ground. And that was very new apartments. Like you can imagine that they got ready built in 2021. People were moving in. It was like high-end apartments. Even I was like looking at them and dreaming like one day I will buy myself there a studio and I will live there pretty good life. And I was dreaming about this, to buy this apartment. And last time when I was visiting Ukraine, I like they had very big panoramic windows and you could see how people just move in. They just organized their space. They started to live a beautiful life. Like everything started to settle, and now none of it is there anymore. So they have to start from scratch. And also knowing the background of Ukrainians, how many of them have to work to afford those things, it's pretty painful to understand the damage level of it. But of course, the human lives are most important, and also the fact that people are hearing air raid alarms like so many times during the day. It's like too many times a day. They're getting used to it, so they don't take the danger in the consideration, and they don't hide that much in the shelters as they did in the beginning. And what, as a result, we know that not long time ago it was a rocket in Dnipropetrovsk, and their entire building just got under the rubbles, and it was on a weekend, and a lot of kids died there, a lot of people died there. It was like a big grief for all of us. Like life change, like just ended there. uh, yeah. although when you go closer into personal histories to each of them, of the stories of the people, it's unprecedented pain, sort of.
Yeah, I think most people, when they imagine the war in the Ukraine, they think they're just bombing government or like important sites, but they're just bombing everything, the
I
neighborhoods.
would say that they are not even like they're fighting. What is also very cruel with it is in the winter they started to bomb down the electric power plants, and Ukraine in the like we have very cold winters, like the temperature goes so much below the zero and it's cold, and people didn't have electricity, heating, water, uh, light, nothing. Like life stopped. Like even like a basic story of my friend who was like uh living in a capital, like in Europe, she couldn't buy food for many days because there was no electricity. And of course, where there's no electricity, no grocery stores working. And it means that you cannot pay with the bank card. And if you can't pay with the bank card, you have to pay with the cash. But in order to take out the cash, you need to find a bankomat which still has some cash and has electricity to give you the money. So she walked for like many kilometers to find a bankomat, and she managed to like ATM, let's say that correctly. So she found an ATM and she got like $20 out, and she was like, I was so happy that at least I got $20. Now I can go to like a farmer's market on the weekend and buy some essential things because there was very little food lately. And it's hard. I don't know how they survive. They are so strong. I have full respect for that they're really making it through. Um, Also, my friend, she got pregnant under the war, and for her it was like very important because they were trying to get a kid for like more than 2 years, and of course, like, well, it happened during the war, so they decided like anyway we have to keep the child, and it was a very hard pregnancy. And for her, like she was living on the 15th floor apartment. um, every time she had to go to the doctor, she couldn't use elevator because there's electricity can stop anywhere anytime, and you can end up sitting in an elevator for god know how many hours because you're not alone who can get stopped in the elevator because electricity just drops for many hours in many houses simultaneously, so they are not like savers will not come in the closest hour. And she had to walk down with her big belly up and down 15 floors, and she was walking very slowly, and because she had like her state of the pregnancy wasn't the best one. And then every time like she could come to the clinic and they will tell her, oh, like you came already late to analysis, come tomorrow. Then she goes to the private one, she arrives to the private one, and there is like, oh, we don't have electricity. And then the air alarm comes and then everyone run to the basement, and you're like, will we ever get a checkup or not? Like, I've been walking for centuries to get like some treatment, and there is no. But luckily everything went well. She got a healthy daughter. um but it's still very, very scary because you never know.
Jeez.
Yeah, she's my mother hero. Like, I think she's such a great girl, and it's so strong that she's really making it through. And also like those fights when Russia is doing by taking down the electricity, taking down all the facilities, infrastructure. It's not that it's fighting with the equal force, like let's say army and the soldiers. It's fighting through the most weakest and vulnerable group of people, which are like mothers, elderly people, babies. Like that girl, to feed that baby, like you need like a fridge or something. You need like to heat the milk with something. You need to clean that baby, and there is like no water, nothing, like electricity 2 or 1 hour a day. And how to make it survivable, it's nuts. Also, like when the lights go off, also the phone goes on and internet goes on, everything, oh, I mean not on, off. So you're basically sitting in a bunker, like you don't anything. And that also brings a huge economical impact to the country, because for the most people work stopped.
So there's just people trying to live a regular life during a full-out war.
Yeah, exactly. But
That's
Ukrainians
insane.
are really like, I'm very impressed, because every time I talk with them, they're more cheerful and positive than I am by reading the news from Ukraine. They're like, we're making it through. Like, for example, that my friend who was telling how hard it was to get the money to buy some simple food, she was super happy. For her, it was like, wow, I made it. I found money. It's great. For me, I was like, oh my God, how? So they're really repairing a lot of things pretty quickly. Um, I already see the posts of the things which Russia bombed, the roads, the buildings there got destroyed, how it's already getting renovated and things are starting to function. So Ukrainians don't give up, and all the support which is coming from Europe on a daily basis is really working. Like they're buying like generators to provide electricity. They are really, you see the results. They're like small, like building everything quickly up, and they're like, it was the war, now it's pretty again. So yeah, I'm very fascinated by them. So
What
they're one.
about those the young men you were telling me about who are who had been soldiers in the war that you met in Sweden, I think,
No, it was in Norway I met
in
them.
Norway?
Yes, that's another perspective of the war. There you really see how, like, how cruel and ugly the war is. It was like Europe takes Ukrainian soldiers, because like our hospitals are so full that there are not enough places sometimes to treat our soldiers. So the Europe is helping us by sending big planes, specially designed now for our soldiers, where they evacuate wounded one with a very like difficult how to say, damage,
Wounds.
wounds. Yes, exactly. So many of them go to Germany, to Netherlands, to other country, and somehow to arrive to Stavanger, and it's the city I live in, Norway. So of course, like as soon as I arrived to Norway, they came like 3 days before me. We ran to them to meet them, and you open the door and you see two young faces. One was 23, the other one was 24. The one who is 23, Alexander, he got his arms pretty damaged. And you can imagine, like, you're still so young, like they're so much younger than me. Um, and he has like barely two fingers functioning on his arms. Because he lost his elbow. They got like under artillery attack. So like his elbow got damaged and all his nerve system is like out from the hands. So I know that Norway is trying to bring some life back to him, and they're doing a lot of like surgery, nerve system
Yeah.
interventions to his body. So like slowly he can get some strength and ability to move his fingers, but exactly now it's bad. But he's positive. He's like trying to work his fingers to work out them every day. And the other boy, he's 24, and he was not military trained. He just joined the army the day the war started, just because he felt that he has to be there. And he got 400 like bites, not bites, but pieces in his body, because he also got under artillery attack, and all the asphalt, metal parts, everything landed in his body. And every time some of the parts are getting out of his body because it's pushing it gets very much inflamed, and it's very painful. But somehow he says he doesn't feel pain anymore, and all the doctors think that that's some sort of magic happened to him, because usually it's a hell of a pain. And his left arm is still very badly functioning, so they're trying to do some surgery to him. But he's like, I can still go to army and shoot with the right hand. And he's saying that their perspective is that Russia is still a strong military country. They still have a lot of sources. They still have a lot of rockets. They still have a lot of bombs, and their weapon is like never ending. Their amount of people that they're sending to war, it also looks like it's never gonna end, because they shoot 200 soldiers down, like the Russians ones, and from the ground the new one arises and come. It's like a zombie apocalypse. It's like you kill and they double, you kill and they double. It's like people, like Russian enemies, just like crossing over the dead bodies and falling and going, falling and going. And Ukrainians army is like shocked, like how many bullets do they have to shoot it all down? It's crazy. And he's saying that there's equal chances. There's still Russia can win. It's fully possible. That can happen. And when he said it, I was like, what? Because everyone is like, Ukraine will win, Ukraine will win. And he's like, who said it? Have you been to the war field? Things looking fully opposite. It's pretty hard to kill them and make them go away. And I was like, wow, that's scary. But he told me, like, you have to still support. It should not go on the passive level, like things are just getting like, it has to be actively removed. So the work which America gives and the Europe gives, it's all which still keeping us alive, but it's hard to move it away. Yes.
So how has this changed maybe your life perspective and your values?
Mm, of course, values changed a lot. If before for me, like to have like you pretty life, buying a lot of things, like uh, now, like comfort, this is like, it doesn't count anymore. Like for me, as long as I have a roof, as long as I have somewhere to sleep, and I can have some food, my life is excellent. Like there's like rain outside, storm outside, like some difficulties, some like normal people problems at my life, they're like, it's not a problem for me anymore, because I know what is the real problem can be. um so I think like I became more like chill and positive, in a way that all those simple things which can happen in a daily life, they don't drive me crazy as they could have done before, because I know what what the real problem can actually be, uh, and issues. And also like the connection between my family, I understood that for me, like they can bomb my house, they can steal my things, they can do whatever they want, just like my friends and the ones I care and love should be alive. Like that's the prio one. The rest I don't care about at all. I passed over that stage. I mentally like said goodbye to everything. um Also, like seeing like some, for example, my favorite parks, my favorite museums getting under the shelling, and you see that even those things are fragile and they die. You're like, okay, we will rebuild, but just don't kill the people. So yeah, you understand those things a bit differently. And also, I think I have never ever experienced in my life that amount of stress, tension, hate, pain, like never. I The emotions which are ruling in me most of the time is so different that they're not even like for me. Like, people who know me, I'm very positive and very easygoing and smiling. Now it's a bit changed. And like, for example, I cannot go to the parties anymore, I cannot dance, I cannot like be very chill and relaxed, because it just feels wrong. Not in a way that like the problem, but you just don't enjoy those things anymore. You have so much pain inside you that you're in a like permanent grief, so to say. Also, like, you can cry pretty easily. It doesn't take me a lot to cry during the work. Like, I can hear some news, it shocks instantly, because your nerve system is so fragile. You have so much tension that everything can drive you down, like this, in terms like the news and the war, like news from there, not the daily life problems. Yes.
So what have you done? How have you managed to stay mentally healthy during this time?
uh, well,
Because you're alone right now. You're
uh,
way out in the country.
yes, now yes, but for example, on the first phase of war, when everything was happening and everything was new, when it was like the hardest part, um I was still working. Like, I was going to my internship all the time, every day. Like, everyone saw that I was like sort of a ghost. Like, I was like pale purple green. I don't know, because I was not sleeping and not eating. So I didn't look that healthy to the people around me. Like, I stopped wearing makeup. My eye bags were like gigantic, and I was just like, if I'm exist, it's already good. So, and everyone told me, like, take a free day off, like go home and rest, like you obviously stressed out, like do that. And I followed that advice, and one day I was like, I don't have energy to move out, so I stayed at home, and I basically cried all day, like all those 12 hours I was spending at home. I cried a river. So I decided, no, I better go to my internship, because at least I kind of like hold my second face for the people, and it protects me like from breaking down completely. Um then, after the first months of war, people started to connect me a lot, to some organizations in Sweden and in Europe started to connect me to ask to translate English or Swedish papers to Ukrainian, because there was a lot of refugees coming. A lot of things had to be like documented, registered, some centers and stuff. And of course, many Ukrainians doesn't know English, so for them it's easier that the information they meet will also be in Ukrainian. So I started to translate a lot. That helped me because then I felt that I can actually be useful in this situation, and help my country, like physically, sort of. That dragged me from like a constant tear, like ocean. So it started to be better. But for example, also, which is pretty sad, I stopped doing art. Like, I was running my store, I was doing a lot of posters, I had so many projects coming up. It all died. basically, and everything I had, like my postcards and stickers and like the new designs which I was planning to launch, I sold it out for like some events for supporting Ukraine. So all that money for my art got donated. So now I have like zero things, and I cannot create anything because there is a very big emptiness inside me at the moment. I cannot create. But what I'm doing now is I'm doing embroidery, at least like some threads and some patterns. Like, but I don't create those patterns. I'm not capable yet.
Oh man. Okay. So you're an art restorer.
Mhm.
Once this war is done, what are your plans then? Do you want to go back to Ukraine and restore the art that was damaged during the war, or what's your idea?
Of course, that's the thing, which is very important to do because there is people who are fighting for a future Ukraine. They're giving their lives. They're giving up everything for the future of Ukrainian to be alive. And that I have such a big value for. And I cannot like sit aside in a comfortable Europe and not participate in my future country of in the future of my country, and stay aside. That's like totally unacceptable, and I for sure want to bring all my knowledge and the skills I have to help Ukrainian museums to come back to life. Also, like there have been so many museums damaging, so many collections got stolen. Now it's officially registered at about 500 cultural objects fully destroyed, 30 museums. UNESCO registered so far at about like 200 objects fully damaged, like historical buildings, churches, museums, art. Um, and that's very high numbers. And of course, if I have a talent to conserve and restore, I need to come, bring my knowledge and help Ukraine, because I would like my country to be beautiful. I would like my country to live and develop. So I know that it will be needed and I will come. That will be my front, so to say. That's how I will contribute to the future.
Why do you think the Russians would destroy um, cultural objects for the Ukrainian? What does that do to the psyche of the Ukrainians?
Mm, I've been listening like to a thought because we were like I was thinking like pretty long time that um now the civilization is sort of like all the Europe, all the civilized countries, like everyone is growing, developing, creating, and trying to be better and trying to be innovative, present some new ideas. So it all goes like to be great in by doing something, while Russians, they are not inventing that much, they don't do that much, and to have an image that they are a great country, they run on like imperialistical thoughts that let's bring the war, let's take some territories and show that we are actually great and powerful nowadays. And that's how they will keep like the love for the government, the love for their country, and that's how they will feel strong and unbreakable. um, and also the fact that they don't respect other cultures, they don't respect other countries. And Ukraine, I feel like they never respect me because they were always saying, oh, our brother, our little sister. Why? I don't know. So that's a bit annoying. And we're sharing a big border with Russia, and somehow they think that we are part of them. They were really integrating their language and their mindset into us. And instead of like Ukraine getting more detached and going towards the Europe, we were sort of like more connecting to Russia, because Russian power and Russian government had very strong influence on our government. So we were kind of under them for a long time without like clearly understanding what's going on, because we were being independent for like 30 years. And it was hard in terms of languages. They really wanted that Russian should be the second official language in Ukraine. Thanks God it never happened. But it's still hard. And I think that that's how they wanted to bring to feel that they are still great as a country, is to take some other territory. But now I also heard a version that, well, Russia is a big country. They still have a lot of territories. There have been so many countries they have been occupying not that long time ago, in the same way as they do now in Ukraine. And they don't do anything with those territories. Like, they come, they bomb, they destroy the life there, and it still stays the same as the day the war came. Like, they don't do anything there. So why should they take new territories of Ukraine, which they are not interesting and not capable to create something new or better, because they're not interested in that. So then I thought that also the fact that they are killing a lot of people, that they are killing a lot of our heritage, they're stealing a lot of our things. I understand it's more about to remove Ukraine as a cultural identity nation, that we're not even ever existed, and destroy our code, destroy that everything should be just like Russia. Like, there's nobody better than them, because Ukraine as a country started their development way, 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 way earlier than Russia. And for Russians, it's like they can't accept that we're way older than them in history, that we're different than them, because they want to be the first one. So they're like, we should remove everything from Ukraine, which somehow tells that they are the ones who has the history. They want to take everything as it's there, which is not. So that's why they're removing us, just to feel greater in their own history. So that's the thing. So I don't know if that sounded very messy or no, but somehow I'm trying to explain the way I
Oh,
can.
that makes sense. You said, the Russian national pride is based on empire rather than culture, right?
Yeah.
And so the Russians have a history of colonizing Ukrainian culture. Like, when you think of great Russian painters, one that pops in my head is Ilya Repin, who's actually Ukrainian, right?
Yes.
Um, the paintings that are here are, I don't know if I can say it. How do you say it?
Arhip Quincy.
Right. He's also Ukrainian, but you think
Yes.
he's Russian. Who's the great landscape painter I really like? What's his name?
That's him. That's Arhip
No,
Quincy.
the other one who does the really detailed landscapes.
Shishkin. He's Russian.
Shishkin. Love Shishkin. He's
No,
act
but I
he's a
think
Russian?
I think so.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Well, why would they claim, them as Russian? Is that part of that game to try to change the narrative, right?
Change the narrative showed that Ukrainians doesn't have anything. We don't own anything what we can be proud of, and
Mm.
just take everything as there. Like, we have
Mm.
so many more great artists, so many inventions were happening, and they were executing all our out writers. They were killing them, they were sending them to gulag. The most strong part of the history, it's called executed Ukrainian Renaissance, as I if I say this term correctly, I think it sounds like that. So executed Renaissance, it's the artists which were it's modernism, so it's beginning of the 20th century until the 30s, and we were really creating a lot of like crazy avant-garde modernism in, and we had very leading artists in theater. We were very innovative in stuff, and they just killed them all. Like literally all of them got executed. So that called executed Renaissance. Also during like SSSR time, when like 80s 70s, every Ukrainian artist who had like strong ideas and wanted to bring the beauty of our culture, our ideas, our like codes, they were killed, like just gone. Because they wanted us to paint just Lenin, Stalin, they're the great ones. Everything which sort of has other theme, other compositions, other ideas that can bring the danger to their country, and that had to be removed. Also, the fact that you're saying that the Repin, Koinji, Malevich, it has been many, many years, those big names in all the museums written as the Russian artists. And it has been a big problem because a lot of Ukrainian museums were and art historians were writing to museums abroad, please change it. They are not Russian artists or whatever it is. And the answers were very like loyal, yes, yes, of course, but no. And nothing was changing. But now now the war arrived, the attention is on its maximum. So the first ones now, it has been the Metropolitan Museum, which recognized those artists as Ukrainian and changed their tags. And also, I'm pretty grateful that they even mentioned that the Museum of Koinji, this beautiful landscape artist, got destroyed to the ground by Russians in Mariupol as entire city. And of course, they stole all his paintings, and now even Russians are writing in their news officially that their art collection got bigger by like $20 million. They stole at about more than 40,000 art paintings, and they're very proud of it. There's a lot of big artists there.
Yeah, this tactic is very old. The degenerate art to attack any type of creative or critical thought, to
Yes,
suppress it, to make one unified vision of the nation. It's very old.
very
What
old.
and it sounds like, even before the war, there was a subtle propaganda campaign to get Russian language into the country and Russian thought. Um, what's your view on propaganda? How has that affected Ukrainian Russians?
Well, it affected Russians pretty much because I feel like if in the beginning all the Ukrainians were like addressing and talking to Russians to awake them and say like, we're actually dying under your rockets, like in the middle of the day on our normal streets and houses, like there are rockets coming, like can you please stop that, that's cruel. There was no reaction. Russians were ignoring. I don't know if they are scared, if they support the war. Many reasons, but there was no protest. Nothing. Like literally nothing. Like I can even like
Well, maybe
was
nothing that was shown on television or reported on.
no. It was very little. Okay, they're also saying a lot like we can't go to protests, we're getting into the prison and stuff like that. I mean, okay, but it's not like the spaces in the prisons are limited. Okay, they can take like 10,000 of people, 15,000 of people, but if already 1.5 million of Russians fled away from Russia, which are saying that they're against the war, they cannot put in the prison one 1.5 million of people. So if that 1.5 people, instead of flying away, went together as an idea out and said, no, all the weapon, all the tanks, all the guns are in Ukraine now. Your country is like, do whatever you want now there. Like, you're pretty much safe. Okay, you will go to prison for 10 days. Okay, 2 years. But it's not 1 million will go to prison. Like, who has military, like, prisons big as that? So things could have changed. It was, if it was a big idea that has to be changed, but they are very afraid of their country. Even I was very surprised that, for example, in a country like Iran, and they're also suffering from their autocratic government, but they're still going in the protest. Like, they showed clearly that they are not the part of the government. They are fighting for their rights. They're like, they are out. Like,
Right.
you see them. Russians, even though, okay, you're afraid in your country that you're scared to be beaten up. You're now in the Europe. I have not seen a single protest of the Russian group which are standing and saying, like, we are against the war. We are not the part of the government. Help us to take the government down. None, like zero. And I'm like, you will not be beaten up in Europe. What are you scared of gathering yourself here? So many Ukrainians like fled also now from the war. They're organizing like meetings and protests all the time. They're marching, they're waking like attention all the time. It's difficult work. It's a lot of, it takes time, but we are doing it. Why you cannot do that? So for me, the propaganda in Russia is strong. It's so strong that it's impossible to talk to them. It's very hard to explain. Even if they start the speech like, oh, I'm against the war, I'm not part of the country, the next question will be like, how happy you were when Crimea got taken? Many of them were super happy that Crimea got taken. Many, like 90% of Russians loved it. And that also gave the power to Russia that our crimes are actually being tolerated by civilized world. We can do more. Let's invade more. So that's why everyone is talking that to make the sanctions and zero tolerance to the Russians is now very important. It's very important from the perspective that if we are not tolerating them, if we are putting a lot of sanctions, putting a lot of stops for them, they will be finally punished. Because if they're not punished, they will feel great, that what they're doing is great. They can continue to do whatever they want because there is no law written for them to not do specific things. That's why like all the laws by protecting culture, art, all of this like Blue Shield organization, all of it works in a civilized world. For Russians, those laws doesn't work because they break them and they feel power by breaking them. So it's very hard to stop them. And that's why it's a bit important to distance yourself from them at the moment, because you cannot explain anything to them. You can also ask them, how do you think the war should end? You will get pretty surprisingly answers. So for me, I'm not talking to them anymore.
If you have an idea, how do you beat this long indoctrination of propagandistic mind control? How could someone overcome that? Is it possible?
Of course, it's possible. It's possible. It's hard. I wouldn't say that's easy because I don't know how much they're getting, like what is the level, but I know that it's pretty much negative. They are saying that Ukrainians are like Nazi people. We are like super scary. Like they create a lot of fairy tales, but it's like if you want to know the truth, like stop believe that Russia is telling the truth, because as soon as you start to read news from all the like official sources around the Europe, everywhere, they write something opposite. And you cannot say that everyone is an idiot except you. Like, you're the smartest, but the world is idiot. Like, if you start think at that point like that, something is really wrong with you. Because it can't be like that. It's just strange to think that, you're all idiots, I know the truth. No, it doesn't work like that. So for me, I would first, because the news are now so much, they're writing so much about the situation, it's very hard to avoid it. Like, even if you want, it's hard. So yeah, if you start to, even I know that in Ukraine they also have some sort of like propaganda and stuff. It's a bit it's mild, it's more like to keep the sanity of people, to not lose their hope in those dark times. So they're really make news a bit more like romanticized, in a way that we are
Hmm.
strong, we will win, there will be the light, don't give up. Like, the news in a way can be a bit covered. Like, we still don't know the official number of how many of our soldiers are dying, and their number is super huge. We just know how much Russians we kill, but it's all those things are hidden because it brings a lot of damage, and it takes the power away from Ukrainians. And
Hmm.
we're already losing so much that certain truths is good that they're covering. But still, in European news, there is a lot of truth coming. And I'm usually like half and half. I read both Ukrainian news, I read both like Swedish news, I go sometimes to the English news. So I'm mixing just to like, and I'm talking to people, to my friends,
Hmm.
because they are living there. They also know. And of course, now it's very hard to find a Ukrainian person who doesn't have anyone he knows at the war. Even we have some relatives at war from our side. So you get news also from our soldiers, you know how they have it and what they're doing. And that image, yeah, you're trying. It's not just like one channel you're rotating.
Is there any way that people could help?
Of course. Oh, like, okay, starting from the help, I need to say that people helping a lot, they're supporting a lot, and that counts. Like, the results that Ukraine is still Ukraine. Like, I still haven't changed my passport to the Russian. Like, I don't have a Russian flag waving over Kiev. That all because of that huge amount of support which is was given and still going to Ukraine. So the results are visible. And now that we got a lot of like um, air protection system from the rockets, like, we're like Ukrainian, like, I know that if, let's say, Russians are sending 7 rockets on a city per day, maybe just 5 of them will fall. So pretty big percentage is getting destroyed on the way, and that's because we got the protection system. Now we're going to get the tanks, all those things. But that's a bit scary, because I feel if Europe and all the other countries are starting to give us heavy weapon, it means that they know something, and what they know is that things like the war gonna escalate, and it's already escalating. Uh, that's very hard to know, because I know that there is soldiers and they're young and their mothers are really crying, and I don't want any of them die. So I don't want any big battlefields, but also I know that if there is not going to be big battlefields, we will never take our territories back. Then there is a lot, like, for example, if you want to support our soldiers, the best ones I can recommend is Save Life in Ukraine. And the ones who are doing these organizations volunteering, they're really doing a great job. You can see all the results of what they're buying, what they're sending, and where and how. And that's pretty much the help which is needed for our soldiers. So if you don't want them to be killed and be strong. That's the thing where you have to support. If you want to support the art, um, that's way easier, because nowadays every museum in each country has like small donation things for Ukraine, which go directly to the museum. And I know that they're really sending the help. Ukrainians are receiving them. I've been involved in some of those projects, like my museum, which I'm working on, is taking very active part, and to help. And they collect money, they collect material, they have contacts to museums which are in need, and they know exactly what they need, so they send directly everything. Because also in Ukraine it's hard to buy anything, and it's hard to find certain things. So for example, there was like one museum in Kherson, and it was national museum. It got shelled, so all the windows, everything got gone, and they got instantly the help from Netherlands museum funding, because like people are donating, like simple visitors, 200,000 euros, and that helped them like instantly to like build up the windows, protect the doors, mend all the holes in the roof, so the buildings will not deteriorate further. And those things are happening pretty quickly. Like if building getting damaged today, tomorrow like they're already gonna like start to repair. So the money needs like today. And they're receiving it, and the help is getting pretty quickly. So ask your closest museum if they have like a little QR code or something where you can donate money to help us. Also, I know if you're somewhere living in Europe, there is now a very interesting exhibition from Ukrainian National Museum going around the Europe. Now they have been in Madrid. It's called like In the Eye of the Storm, and it's Ukrainian modernism artworks of many people. Like those, many of those artists have been like executed in a way. So yeah, I really highly recommend to see. There you can see also like art treasures from Ukraine, and to know a bit more about our culture. And I think the next one, they will go after Madrid, they're going to Köln, then they go to Brussels, and then they go to London. So you're all pretty welcome to see it if you're living close to that cities. And your visit is also like a big support, because you learn, and your idea of Ukraine is what also gives us the strength that you don't miss taking us with Russia. That's important. So all those things are, I think, will be helpful. Also, we need to think that there is women, kids, many kids have been seeing a lot of cruelty. They've been seeing like bodies which were blowing up in small pieces in front of their eyes. They have been seeing their mothers or their relatives dying or shot in front of their eyes. Those kids really need help, and many of them are can't sleep at nights. They stop talking, and they're really traumatized. And there's also a lot of like psychological centers which need money, so those kids can be traveled to Europe, get the help to change some image and get correct psychological help. That's very important, because this war is really trying to take our future by also traumatizing our kids, and they're very sensitive because those things can really damage. I will also give you the link below on the other centers, because some people don't want to support the army, some people don't want to support the art. Then you can support the kids and their mental health, because those are the most vulnerable group. Yes, so that's important. Yeah, that I would say is and also like don't. I would say very important now. It's that we're gonna have soon Olympic Games,
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a big thing, and it's very important to keep your mind clear and understand that there is no way Russia and Belarus can participate. It's not even acceptable, because all those athletes, they are supporting the war. If they have been not supporting their government or the war, they wouldn't have been sponsored to train. So that will be very important. If in case this happens, countries boycott, because that's very important step that cannot be tolerated in any form. Because the war, first of all, didn't end, it not even close to end, and we need to keep cold mind with that.
Thank you for going through all that. I know that's mentally and emotionally draining to talk about all that stuff, but now it is recorded and archived, and I'll do my best to promote this episode and get it out to the world. It'd be nice to have you on again in the future to talk to artists maybe about how they could repair or preserve their art.
Of course.
Um, yeah, stay strong. Thank you for your time, and thank you to everyone who listened today. Please support the war in any way that you feel comfortable doing, and remember to be critically creative.